Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping into a collection of ideas that have really struck a chord with a lot of people lately, pulled together from tweets, interviews, all sorts of writings. Our focus today is the thinking of Naval Ravikant. We're looking specifically at excerpts from the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, which Eric Jorgensen compiled. And this isn't just, a quick summary. It's more about digging into the core insights that could genuinely reshape how you look at things.
That's absolutely right. What we have here is, well, it's kind of a treasure trove, really. It covers Naval's perspectives on building wealth, sharpening your judgment, and maybe most importantly, finding happiness. Our mission is sort of take this dense material and make it really accessible, pulling out those practical, actionable nuggets you can actually test out in your own life.
Think of it like a shortcut, maybe, to understanding some seriously powerful ideas about living more intentionally, maybe more successfully. From someone who's clearly spent a lot of time thinking deeply about it all, we're going to unpack his foundational principles, highlight some fascinating details, and explore how these different areas kind of connect.
And it's important to keep in mind these aren't doctrines. The foreword itself says, take nothing as gospel. It's really about considering these ideas, turning them over in your mind, and being willing to challenge your own assumptions, your long-held ones.
Okay, let's start with the topic everyone seems fascinated by, wealth. Naval has that super famous tweet storm, right, about getting rich without getting lucky. What's the fundamental idea he's trying to get across there?
He really flips the script on what making money is. He argues it's not something you do like in a job sense, trading hours for dollars. It's fundamentally a skill you learn. He's so convinced he's even claimed he could lose everything and rebuild his wealth in maybe 5 to 10 years in pretty much any English-speaking country, just because he's developed this skill set.
Wow. So it's not just about the sheer number of hours you grind away.
Exactly. He's quite clear. Hard work is absolutely necessary, but it's about knowing what work to do, who to do it with, and when to do it. It requires understanding, like leverage and systems, not just grinding 80 hours a week in a job where your output is totally tied to your time input.
Right. And he makes that really important distinction between wealth, money, and status. How does he break those down?
This is key. Wealth, for him, is having assets. Things that generate income while you sleep.
Okay. Like businesses, investments.
Exactly. Businesses, real estate, investments. Money is just the medium of exchange, how we transfer time and wealth around. And status, that's just your position in the social pecking order. His strong advice is pursue wealth, ignore the status games completely, and be wary of people obsessed with status because they often try to gain ground by undermining wealth creators.
Interesting. And a cornerstone of building this kind of wealth seems to be ownership.
Equity. Oh, absolutely crucial. He's quite firm on this. You won't get truly rich just renting out your time. To get that financial freedom, that ability to earn while you're not working, you must own a piece of a business. Equity.
So that could be stocks or starting your own thing.
Yeah, could be buying stocks or even more powerfully, starting your own company. Ownership is what fundamentally disconnects your time input from your potential financial output. He points out even highly paid pros, like top doctors, they often accumulate serious wealth only when they start their own practice or create some kind of intellectual property, basically building a business around their skill.
Right. Makes sense.
Without ownership, you're generally paid the minimum required to keep you, and your earning just stops the moment you stop working.
Okay. This brings us neatly to leverage, which he talks about as a massive multiplier.
Yeah.
What kind of leverage is he discussing?
Leverage is the force multiplier. It amplifies your judgment, your effort. It's really the key ingredient in building significant fortunes. He outlines 3 main types.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's capital. Just money. Raising capital needs specific skills, trust, solid judgment. Second, labor. Having other people work for you. That's the oldest form, right? It's effective, but often means managing others, getting their permission to direct them.
Right, the traditional way.
And third, code and media. Creating products with 0 or very low marginal costs to replicate.
Like books, podcasts, software.
Exactly. Books, podcasts, software, courses. This is the new leverage, technology-driven, and crucially, it's permissionless.
Permissionless. What exactly does that mean in this context?
It means you don't need anyone's approval to start. You don't need permission to write code or hit record on a podcast or publish an article.
Ah, okay, that sounds incredibly powerful today.
It really is. He talks about effectively having an army of robots available through code in data centers. And if you don't code, your leverage comes from writing, recording, tweeting, making videos. These are assets that can literally work for you 204/7 while you sleep. He contrasts this sharply with traditional labor leverage, where you always need permission. Someone has to agree to follow you or work for you.
Right. And he uses that to summarize a major economic shift.
Mm-hmm.
Less about rich versus poor, more leveraged versus unleveraged.
Exactly that. The goal is to position yourself, in a role or a business model where you control your time. And your impact isn't just tied to hours logged, but to your output, especially output magnified by tools and leverage. That's where the really significant, exponential wealth creation happens.
Got it.
He uses that real estate example, starting as a laborer, paid hourly, then a general contractor managing labor, then a developer using capital, and finally a tech company like Zillow using massive code and capital leverage. The potential upside is just orders of magnitude larger.
So the mantra is earn with your mind, not your time.
That's it. Earn with your mind.
Okay, so alongside leverage, specific knowledge is another pillar. What exactly does he mean by specific knowledge?
Specific knowledge. It's that unique blend of skills and insights that's deeply personal to you. Often it's a combination of your innate talents, your upbringing, your unique experiences. It's usually found by following your deep, genuine curiosity, not by chasing the latest trend or what someone says is hot.
So it's not about going into the field with the highest starting salary necessarily.
No, definitely not. It's knowledge that society values but can't easily teach or train others to replicate. It's kind of specific to you.
Like someone who's just a natural salesperson or has a knack for design.
Perfect examples. Or someone amazing at simplifying complex things, or with a unique artistic voice. It's something you're uniquely suited for, and ideally something you genuinely enjoy doing, which makes you willing to go all in,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this ties into his idea of escape competition through authenticity. If you're building something that's a true extension of who you are, in a way only you could do it,
Yeah.
then nobody can truly compete with you on that level. He points to people like Joe Rogan or the creators of Dilbert, Calvin, and Hobbes. Unique voices.
So it sounds like you need to find that sweet spot,
Yeah.
that intersection of what you're good at, what you love, and what the world actually needs and will pay for.
Precisely. That's the trifecta. And once you find it, you apply that specific knowledge using leverage.
Yeah.
And you add accountability. That's
Yeah.
crucial
This
too.
accountability, meaning
Meaning taking business risks under your own name, your own brand, putting yourself out there. It's inherently scary, right? You risk failure, criticism, maybe even humiliation. But society rewards that willingness to stand behind your work and your decisions, rewards you with responsibility, with equity in what you build, and access to more leverage. He shared a story about the risk he took talking publicly about, philosophy and crypto way back. Got negative feedback, but that public stance under his name, it ultimately paid off massively.
Okay. He also mentions compounding, and not just for money.
Absolutely. Compounding is huge, but yeah, not just financial, your reputation compounds. If you consistently act with integrity, build a sterling reputation over decades, people notice, they trust you, opportunities just flow your way. Relationships compound too. Working with people you deeply trust over many years makes everything so much easier, simpler, more valuable. There's this baseline of good faith. He mentions his connection with Elad Gil as an example.
Right. Removes friction.
Totally. And he has this pretty stark perspective on effort and wasted time, which ties into compounding.
Well, what's his take?
Well, he argues that if you look at it purely from a goal achievement angle, a huge amount of our effort he throws out, 99%, could be seen as wasted.
99%. Wow.
Yeah, think about school, learning stuff you never use, or dating before finding the right person. His point isn't that effort is bad, but to be ruthlessly thoughtful about where you apply it. When you find that small area, that 1% of your effort in a skill, a relationship, an interest where you can earn compound interest and it feels deeply meaningful to you, go all in.
And conversely.
Conversely, if you realize something isn't compounding, isn't leading where you want, don't keep pouring time into it just out of habit or inertia. Cut your losses. Be honest about it.
Okay. And the ultimate goal of all this wealth building, it seems to be getting paid for your judgment.
That's the pinnacle, yeah. In this age of leverage, you want the capital, the code, the robots doing the repetitive stuff. Your highest value activity becomes applying your well-honed judgment to the big, important decisions. On a large scale, like a CEO steering a huge company, a tiny difference in judgment quality has a massive impact. And society rewards that leveraged judgment incredibly highly.
So, to sum up wealth, It's a skill built through specific knowledge, leverage, accountability, judgment, and patience for the long game of compounding.
That's a great summary. Exactly.
Okay, moving from the external to the internal. Let's talk about judgment itself. He says there's no shortcut to smart, but judgment is underrated. How does he define good judgment?
He defines wisdom as knowing the long-term consequences of your actions. Simple, but deep. And judgment is just that wisdom applied to external problems, real-world challenges. He really emphasizes that in an era of high leverage, one single correct decision can be incredibly valuable. It can outweigh years of just being busy. The direction you're heading, he says, is far more important than how fast you're moving.
Right. Direction over speed. And he connects judgment directly to clear thinking.
Absolutely. He considers clear thinker a much higher compliment than just smart. Real, useful knowledge, in his view, is built from the ground up. Understanding the absolute fundamentals, first principles. He references Richard Feynman a lot, right?
Yeah.
His ability to explain incredible complex physics simply.
Yeah, the Feynman technique.
Exactly. If you can't explain something simply, like to a child, he'd argue you don't truly understand it foundationally. Just memorizing complex stuff without grasping the basics. You're just lost when things get tricky. Building on sand.
That sounds very much like first principles thinking.
It is, explicitly. He suggests building your mental toolkit on foundational skills, things like microeconomics, game theory, psychology, persuasion, ethics, and crucially, basic math. Arithmetic, probability, statistics.
Basic math seems key for him.
Totally. He insists it's fundamental for sound decisions, especially in finance and investing. You don't need fancy calculus, just solid basics. He also brings in scientific concepts like falsifiability. If an idea doesn't make predictions that could, in theory, be proven wrong, it's probably not reliable knowledge. More like dogma.
So how does one actually get better at clear thinking? Improve judgment.
Okay, a huge part of it, maybe surprisingly, is dealing with your ego.
Ego, how so?
Well, our ego, what we want to be true, who we think we are, constantly clouds our perception of what is true, reality. Suffering, he notes, is often just reality forcing you to confront the truth you've been avoiding because of ego. He believes the smaller your ego, the less attached you are to outcomes or identity, the easier it is to see the world clearly, as it is.
Makes sense, less distortion.
Exactly. He also strongly advocates for empty space in your calendar, downtime, time to just think. Free from constant input, busyness, stress. Great ideas and clear insights often come when you allow yourself to be bored, apparently.
Right, not constantly consuming and reacting.
Yeah. He even jokes that really smart people often seem a bit weird because they insist on thinking everything through for themselves, not just accepting conventional wisdom.
He also talks about shedding identity, which connects to the ego point, I guess.
Yes, definitely connected. He sees our identity, our habits, beliefs. We pick them up early on to function. Habits are necessary, obviously, but we get deeply attached to them and to the story of who I am. He argues a crucial skill for growth and better judgment is the ability to uncondition yourself, to constantly ask, does this habit, this belief, this part of my identity still serve me? Or is it holding me back?
So consciously updating your own internal software.
Yeah, exactly. That self-awareness, that willingness to change your programming is key.
He offers a couple of really practical heuristics too, right? Mental shortcuts for decisions.
He does. Two really memorable ones. First, if you can't decide, the answer is no.
Okay.
Because we live in a world of infinite options, big decisions, marriage, jobs, moves, starting businesses. These are long-term commitments. If you're genuinely on the fence, making pro-con lists, just trying to convince yourself, you're not certain enough. He says only commit, only say a definite yes when you are very certain, when it feels like a clear win.
Okay, avoid lukewarm commitments. What's the second one?
The second is run uphill.
Run up.
Yeah. If you're faced with two difficult choices, maybe both seem kind of painful or unappealing, lean towards the one that involves more short-term pain or effort.
Why would you do that?
Because our brains are wired to avoid immediate discomfort, but that path of least resistance now often leads to bigger problems or regrets later. Choosing the harder path up front can build resilience, solve the root issue, and often leads to better long-term outcomes. Avoid kicking the can down the road.
Interesting. Choose short-term pain for long-term gain.
Sort of, yeah. Or at least be wary of choices that seem easy only because they avoid immediate discomfort.
Reading seems absolutely fundamental to his approach for building mental models and judgment.
Oh, reading is like the ultimate meta skill for him. He says it's like we're living in the modern Library of Alexandria. All knowledge is accessible. His advice isn't just read more, but cultivate a genuine love for reading.
How do you do that if you don't naturally love it?
His method is simple. Read what you love until you love to read. Don't force yourself through boring stuff you think you should read. Start with what genuinely grabs you. And it's not a race. Read slowly. Reread important bits. Skim if a book isn't delivering value. And definitely don't feel obligated to finish every single nonfiction book. Many make their core point early on, get the juice, and move on.
Permission to not finish books. I like that.
Yeah. He even suggests reading junk sometimes, or things you totally disagree with, just to stretch your mind and see other perspectives, and to really internalize information, teach it to someone else. Explaining it forces clarity.
Good advice. What kind of reading does he recommend prioritizing?
He suggests focusing on the classics and original works in foundational fields. Math, science, philosophy, the timeless stuff. His rule of thumb. If you're tackling an old human problem, health, values, meaning look to older solutions, ancient wisdom. If it's a modern problem, like navigating social media or driving, look to modern solutions.
Makes sense. Use the right tool for the job. He also talks about reading people,
Right.
Trustworthiness.
Yes, he touches on that. Offers a simple signal.
Right.
Be a little wary of someone who talks constantly about how honest they are.
Interesting heuristic.
He has this strong belief in a kind of practical karma. Not mystical, but that people are fundamentally consistent. Over time, you tend to attract the energy and behavior you put out. Good attracts good. Shady attracts shady. He places huge value on surrounding yourself with people whose core values align with yours. He notes most serious conflicts aren't about logic, they're about mismatched values.
So choose your close circle carefully based on values.
Exactly. He has a rule, something like, the closer you want to get to me, the better your values have to be. High bar for the inner circle.
Wow. Okay, so building judgment. It's this really active, ongoing process. Questioning, learning, shedding ego, shedding old identities, seeking clarity constantly.
That nails it. It's a lifelong practice.
All right, let's shift to the third major pillar,
Yeah.
happiness. Naval talks about it being just as important, maybe more so, than wealth. Yet he's open about not always being happy himself.
Right, he's very candid about his own journey, weights his happiness much higher now, maybe a 910 compared to maybe a 210 a decade ago.
Yeah.
And he's clear, money helps, sure, it removes certain kinds of suffering, but it's a small piece of his current happiness. The big shift came from realizing happiness is important enough to actively prioritize and cultivate.
So it's not just something you passively find or achieve. It's a skill, a choice.
Exactly. He explicitly calls it a skill you develop and a choice you make every day. He believes the mind is way more malleable than we think. Just like you train your body, you can train your mind. We spend so much effort trying to change the external world, right? But we often just accept the default internal programming we got growing up.
That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
So what is happiness to him?
He sees it primarily as a state where nothing is missing. It's about internal peace, contentment, silence in the mind.
So more like peace than, say, excitement or joy.
Absolutely. Peace is the steady state he values. Joy is great, but it's fleeting, comes and goes. Peace can be your baseline. He links anxiety directly to what he calls nexting, that constant mental chatter about what's next, what needs doing, what could go wrong, always living in the future or past.
Yeah, the hamster wheel mind.
Totally. And the fundamental delusion, he argues, is believing that changing your external circumstances is the key to finding that internal peace. True success, he insists, is internal. Peace comes from letting go of the idea that you have problems that need fixing externally, because external challenges are literally infinite. You'll never solve them all.
Okay, so focus inward. What gets in the way? He talks about envy, right?
Oh yeah, he calls envy the enemy of happiness, destructive. He frames wealth and status as multiplayer competitive games. You're always comparing yourself to others. But happiness, that's a single-player game. It's just you and your internal state.
How does he suggest dealing with envy when it pops up?
His insight is really sharp here. When you envy someone for one specific thing, their money, their looks, their job, you're essentially wishing you could be that entire person, with all their baggage, their hidden struggles, their desires, their whole outlook. And since you wouldn't actually want to trade your whole existence for theirs, flaws and all, there's no rational point in being jealous of just one piece.
That's a useful reframe. What else hinders peace? He mentions shoulds.
Hugely important. Getting rid of shoulds. Doing things because you feel you should, usually driven by guilt or social pressure or someone else's expectations, makes you miserable. He argues that eliminating shoulds from your vocabulary and your decision-making is vital for peace of mind. Your peace is constantly damaged by living up to expectations that aren't authentically yours.
Okay, so less envy, fewer shoulds. How does he actively build this happiness, this peace? Through habits.
Habits are absolutely foundational. He truly believes you can systematically train your happiness baseline, just like improving physical fitness. It takes consistent practice.
What kind of habits?
Well, specific ones he mentions or implies are things like practicing non-judgmental awareness, meditation, basically, like choiceless awareness, just watching thoughts without getting hooked, actively looking for the positive side of situations, even small annoyances, training that mental muscle, reducing or cutting out caffeine, which can amplify anxiety, prioritizing daily physical exercise. He calls it finding peace of body.
Movement helps the mind.
Yeah, definitely. Also, consciously appreciating the simple things, the people around you, the presence in your life. Gratitude, actively questioning and dropping desires, asking yourself, is this desire so important that I'm willing to be unhappy if I don't get it? Usually the answer is no. And even telling friends you're a happy person, using consistency bias to reinforce it internally.
Interesting. What about meditation specifically?
He sees meditation as kind of like intermittent fasting for the mind. It helps you realize just how out of control your mind usually is, like a monkey flinging feces is his colorful phrase for the chaotic thought stream.
Oh, okay.
Awareness gives you distance from that monkey mind. It helps you stay in a calmer, more peaceful state instead of being dragged around by every thought and impulse. He tries to run his brain in debugging mode, observing thoughts without immediately identifying with them or acting on them.
Observing, not reacting. Acceptance sounds like another massive theme here.
It's fundamental, yeah. He says in any situation, you basically have three choices. Change it, accept it, or leave it.
Change, accept, or leave.
Right. If you choose to change it, that requires desire. And desire, he argues, inherently involves some level of suffering or dissatisfaction until it's fulfilled. So pick your desires carefully, maybe only one big one at a time. Peace, therefore, often comes from radical acceptance, being fully present with reality as it is, which is impossible if your mind is constantly fighting it, wishing things were different.
How do you cultivate acceptance? It sounds hard.
It is hard. Some hacks he suggests. Look back at past suffering. Often you can see, in hindsight, the growth or perspective shifts that came from it. That builds trust that you can handle current difficulties. Another is practicing finding the positive angle in minor daily annoyances. Train your brain to do it instantly, like a reflex. Spilled coffee. Okay, good. Forces me to slow down.
Reframing small things.
Exactly. And maybe the deepest hack for acceptance. Embracing the reality of death.
Wow, okay. How does that help?
Acknowledging the ultimate futility of everything in the grand cosmic scale can, paradoxically, bring immense meaning and peace to the present moment. It reframes life away from some desperate struggle for permanence towards more of a fun game. The experience of playing, the quality of this moment becomes what matters most, not some distant outcome.
That's profound. He also really stresses taking care of yourself first.
His number one priority, he's very explicit about this, his own health, physical, mental, spiritual comes first, even above family, above work. Because, as he argues, you can't effectively help or serve anyone else if you yourself are depleted or unwell. Put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
He believes a lot of suffering comes from avoidance, avoiding difficult tasks, difficult conversations, even physical discomfort like a cold shower. Facing things directly reduces suffering. He also touches on how modern life often steers us away from our evolutionary roots, contributing to unease.
Like diet and exercise.
Yeah, diet, lack of movement, constant sensory overload, comfy shoes that disconnect us from the earth, avoiding temperature variations. He advocates for a diet closer to paleo or ancestral eating patterns, especially avoiding that modern processed food combo with sugar and fat together, which our bodies didn't evolve to handle well. And his daily morning workout. He says it's a game changer because he made it absolutely non-negotiable. Priority number one, no excuses.
So, cultivating happiness. It's a very active internal process. It requires conscious effort, building specific habits, deep self-awareness, and accepting reality.
That sums it up beautifully. It's work, but it's the most important work, according to him.
Okay, bringing it all together. These ideas on wealth, judgment, and happiness seem deeply interconnected.
They really are. You see how building wealth effectively requires sharp judgment and that unique, specific knowledge. And cultivating judgment and knowledge requires focused learning, clear thinking, dealing with ego, a lot of self-awareness. And then often the pursuit or even the achievement of wealth reveals that external success isn't the source of deep happiness. It points back inward, showing that happiness is an internal skill, requiring peace, acceptance, working on yourself. It's all linked.
He weaves in philosophy and values throughout this too.
Definitely. He pulls from frameworks like evolution, biology, even Buddhism. He talks about rational Buddhism, seeking verifiable truths and internal peace without dogma. His core values really shine through. Total honesty, long-term thinking, applying compound interest not just to money, but to reputation, relationships, learning, everything.
And he gives some great recommendations for further reading, people to follow, emphasizing classics and fundamentals.
Yeah, the source material is packed with specific suggestions, foundational stuff. Things like Sapiens, Feynman's physics lectures, Taleb on risk, Krishnamurti on self-awareness, Seneca and the Stoics, plus specific blogs, Twitter accounts he learns from. He encourages reading broadly, even junk, like we said, but always valuing your time ruthlessly.
He also has those really concise rules or formulas like happiness, health plus wealth plus good relationships, and his Naval's rules.
Yeah, those act like little mental anchors, concentrated reminders of his core principles. Things like be present, desire is suffering, compound interest is key, earn with your mind, watch your thoughts, impatience with actions, patience with results, all those distillations.
Wow, that really was a comprehensive dive into Naval Ravikant's perspectives, covering building a better life from financial freedom all the way to internal peace.
We've definitely covered a lot. Wealth is a skill built on leverage and specific knowledge. Judgment as the key differentiator, cultivated through clear thinking and reading. And happiness as an internal choice and habit, needing acceptance and self-awareness.
It's really clear how interconnected his ideas are, all emphasizing long-term thinking, accountability, and that continuous process of learning and self-improvement.
He offers some really powerful frameworks, I think, for looking at opportunity, risk.
So what does this all mean for you listening? You've heard the nuggets, the core ideas. Now it's really about deciding which ones, if any, you want to stress test, which ones you might want to try integrating into your own journey.
Yeah, and maybe consider this provocative thought from the source material, just something to chew on. If life, at its core, is fundamentally just a series of games we choose to play, and the outcome of any game stops feeling quite so important once you really see through its rules and mechanics. What happens when you realize you've already won the most fundamental game, the one you were biologically designed to play survival? You're here. You survived. So every moment after that basic survival is secured is, in a sense, bonus time. Extra innings. What game would you choose to play then? With that extra time, would it be a game dictated by external validation status, approval, or would you choose a game played purely for its own sake, for the inherent joy, the challenge, the meaning you find in it? Something to think about.
A very powerful question to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some valuable insights to mull over.